After Thanksgiving, we all kind of naturally, immediately flip the page in our life in the holiday season to Christmas. It's kind of just a natural flow. Thanksgiving is barely over and we start thinking about Christmas. Some of us have already actually decorated. Some of us decorate the day after Thanksgiving. For some of us, we can't wait for Christmas to get here. It's just an excitement that builds in us. For others of us, we can't wait for Christmas to be over. It's like, when is December the 26th going to arrive? There's a lot of reasons why. For some of us, a long time ago, Christmas kind of became relegated to the to-do list. It lost its sense of excitement, its sense of joy. There's a myriad of reasons for that. For some of you, you've lost a spouse, you've lost a loved one, and Christmas now is lonely. For others of you, you're empty nesters, and it used to be a house full of energy, and now it's you and your spouse, and it feels different. For some, you're single, and you wish you weren't. For others, you don't have children. And Christmas is a stark reminder of that in so many ways that can be painful. But then there are others of us that Christmas is still filled with that sense of awe and excitement. You can't wait for Christmas morning to tear into the presents. You're so stoked about having time off from work and school, you just are beside yourself. Some of you can't wait to see the expression on someone's face when they tear in to that present that you thought about them and you purchased, and you know it's going to mean so much to them. But whatever side of the equation you're on, I know this: before you know it, Christmas will be in the rearview mirror. Before you know it, we'll be flipping the calendar to 2019 and looking back on Christmas 2018. We'll be looking back and wondering, where did it go? Where did it go? Where did the time go? What was it all about? Some of us will be wondering, how am I going to pay for it? And was it all worth it? Some of us will be wondering, will Christmas next year be better? Some of us will be wondering, when will Christmas get here again? We're all left wondering all kind of questions. Here's my hope that this morning we'll all walk away with this idea that we can make this Christmas different. If we're more intentional, if we're more deliberate, if we approach Christmas with a very clear idea of what we want this Christmas to look like, I believe that we will look back and say, this was one of the best Christmases ever, and it's not because of how much money you spend, and it's not because of how many gifts you give. It's a lot deeper than that. Really, what we're going to answer this morning is this question: what will you make this Christmas about? What will you make this Christmas about? Christmas has all kind of things that it can be about. A lot of festivities and a lot of activities, and those things are fine and good. It's meals, it's decorating the tree, it's buying presents, it's wrapping presents, it's going to Christmas parties, and the list goes on, and I'm all for fun and festive things. Throughout this Christmas season here at Hickory Ridge on Sunday mornings, we have a lot of fun and exciting things planned. We're going to be giving away a special prize, as Kate said, to present to all the families that are here next week. We're going to have a Christmas sweater Sunday. We're going to have cookies and cocoa. We're going to have candlelight and Christmas carols. We're going to have all kind of things. And those are wonderful. And those traditions that you have in your life are rich and full and meaningful. And if we approach them right, they enhance what Christmas is all about. But if we focus exclusively, primarily, and too much on their traditions, they can actually detract from what Christmas is all about. See, for all of us, even if you live a good, long life, you're going to have maybe 100 Christmases that you get to experience. And that's it. 100 Christmases. What will they all have been about? What will you look back on and say, in those Christmases that I got to celebrate, what was it all about? Is it just simply about a pile of wrapping paper and mountains of debt? Is it about another meal? Is it about great times with family and friends? Gifts that were given and forgotten about and thrown in the landfill before you even got to the end of the month, or certainly by the end of January, you don't even know what happened to them. You give gifts to your kids. Who's done this? You give gifts to your kids on Christmas. They're off for a week from school. And 3 days after Christmas, what do they say to you? I'm bored. There's nothing to do. And you're going, what did I just do with all these things that were under the tree? So what do we make this Christmas about? What if we made this Christmas about 4 things? About 4 very specific things, four very simple things. 4 things that you've probably heard about before in the context of Christmas, but 4 things that are so easily forgotten. 4 things that were found in the very first Christmas some 2,000 years ago. 4 things that I believe we remember that first Christmas partly because of these things. Maybe exclusively because of these things. So I want to look at 4 things that if you make this Christmas about, it may be one of the best Christmases you ever had. It will be one of the most memorable Christmases you ever have. You'll never forget it, and you'll never regret it if you make it about these 4 things. So here's the first thing. Make Christmas about inviting. Make it about inviting. Make it about inviting people into an experience with the living God. So I want to read from the very first Christmas story, part of it that's recorded in the Gospel of Luke, about inviting. And here's what it says. It says, the angel said to them, so this angel appears to these shepherds. Jesus had just been born, and the shepherds are out in the hillside, they're tending their flocks, and an angel appears, and it terrifies them. And this is what the angel says. Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. In other words, I want to invite you, the angel's saying, to go see what I'm telling you about. So this is how you'll know that you found this amazing miracle. You'll find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts praising God. When the angels went away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let us go over to Bethlehem and see this thing that happened, which the Lord has made known to us. The first thing that happens after Jesus is born is an invitation is given. Come see what God has done. Come see what God has done. The angel shows up and invites the shepherds into the story. The shepherds who, if you know anything about that time and place and culture and history, shepherds were not considered of any significance in the culture. They were the lowest of the low. They were kind of considered liars and untrustworthy. They stunk. They hung out with farm animals. There was nothing pretty about being a shepherd. But these shepherds, regardless of their station in life, regardless of what they believed, regardless of their lifestyle, were invited in to the Christmas story. And that's what you and I are called to do. We're called to invite people into the Christmas story of our lives. Invite them in. Invite them into your life. Invite them into your home. Invite them into your church. But invite them to come in and experience what God has done. It's such a simple little thing, but so often we get so busy at Christmas with our own stuff, with our own family, with our own events, with our own traditions, that we forget that there are shepherds out on the hillside who need to hear what just happened. They need to hear about this Christmas story. We forget that there are neighbors living just across the street from us who need to hear the Christmas story. They need to be invited to experience what God has done. Now, I want to say something, and this is so important when it comes to inviting. You are not responsible for how someone responds to an invitation. You're not responsible for how someone responds. You're responsible to invite, to keep inviting, to invite over and over and over again. Notice, it says the angel showed up, gives this invitation, then a group of angels all show up and they worship God, and then the angels disappear. They don't wait to see if the shepherds respond to the invitation. They don't wait to see, are they going to go? They stand there, they prod them along. Come on, boys, come on, go on. They just tell them, here's an invitation, go check it out. And they leave. They're gone. The shepherds may respond, they may not. That is not the angel's responsibility. The angel's responsibility, an angel simply means a messenger. So these messengers gave an invitation. And that's what you and I are called to do. As messengers, we're to invite people to experience what God has done. Say, come in and see what has happened here. It's an amazing thing. You are inviting them to experience what God has done. You're inviting them to experience what God has done in your life, through your life, in your marriage, in your family. Come check it out. Just be with me. Experience this. But you don't know how they're going to respond. I'll give you a perfect example. In my own life, this just happened this last week. I have someone in my life, a family member, who I invited back in October to come join us for Thanksgiving. Never heard anything. They never responded to me. They never said yes. They never said no. I never heard anything. On the day before Thanksgiving, the person calls me and says, "Is that invitation still open? I'd like to come." I said, "Absolutely. Can you send me your address? I just need to check to make sure on a couple of things, but I should know in about an hour if I can be there, but send me your address. I'll let you know." Send them my address. That was on Wednesday. I have not heard anything from the person since. Now, I know some of us, our tendency would be like, that's rude, that's inconsiderate. I invite them. They didn't even give me the courtesy of responding. See if I ever invite them again. You're not really inviting. The heart of inviting says, I am going to extend an invitation and extend an invitation and continue to extend an invitation regardless of how you respond. Because you never know when they will respond to that invitation. It's what God does to us. He's constantly calling us, come back to me, come into a relationship with me, hear about what I've done for you through the death of my son Jesus on the cross. And so often, day after day, month after month, year after year, people resist that invitation, and then finally one day they hear and respond. What if God said, I invited you once? Good luck. Oh, that'd be horrible. We need to do the same thing. So this person that's in my life, you know what I'm going to do? I was praying about it. And I'm going to invite them to come for Christmas. And they may come and they may not. I'll even say, I'll drive up and pick you up and bring you if that helps. But I want to continue to invite. And we need to invite because we are inviting them to experience what God has done. And being with you, being at your table, being in your home, coming to your church, they can experience what God has done. But after you invite, there's this next thing that we need to do. We also need to make it about sharing. We need to make it about sharing. See, inviting says, come and just see what God has done. Experience what God has done. Sharing tells what God has done. It's great for people to see what God has done in your life, to see what God has done in your church, to see what God has done in your marriage, in your family. But sometimes you actually have to tell people what you see is not because I'm a really good person. It's not because I've somehow worked really hard and earned this. It's because of God. It's because of God. So here's what happens. The shepherds hear this invitation. And here's what they do. It says this in Luke. It says, the shepherds went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger. And when they saw it, they made known, they shared what the Lord had done. They shared the saying that had been told them concerning this child. And all who heard it wondered at what the shepherds told them. The shepherds shared. They said, we want to share with you what God has done. We want to share with you all that God has done, what He's made known to us. In other words, it's taking who you are and saying, I want to share that with you. This is the message that was made known to me, and now I want to make it known to you. It's sharing the deepest part of who you are. So often we have friends and family who sit around a table at Christmas time, and we all put on our best behavior. We all clean ourselves up just a little bit. We act as best as we can, and we go about 3 centimeters deep. And we never really get to the heart of why we're there. We never really get to the heart of why I'm a different person now than I was when we were growing up. Remember when we were growing up and I was a teenager and I was just self-centered, miserable, angry. I was a young man in my 20s and I was self-centered and all I cared about was me. I had a short temper. Now I'm in my 30s or 40s or whatever stage of life you're in, and you're different and you're changed and you're radically transformed. And instead we just clean ourselves up and act nice and say, this is a nifty little thing. And we never really share the essence of why we've changed. We never share the story of the amazing work that God has done, and we just expect people to know. But the shepherds shared, and people wondered at it. People marveled at it. They wondered what this meant. When you share that essence of who you are, people wonder what it means. See, sharing means sharing yourself with them. The deepest part of who you are. And if you're a Christian, if you're a follower of Christ, then the deepest part of who you are ought to be Christ himself. And if you can't share that, then you need to say, God, change me. Change me, because something is broken inside of me. One of my favorite verses in all the Bible is Galatians 2:20. And this is what it says. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. The deepest part of who you are, if you're a Christian, ought to be Christ. And so when you share your life with somebody, they ought to hear about what Jesus has done. It ought to get to the point. Listen, this is not about preaching the salvation message every time you get around people. It is about saying people ought to get tired of hearing about Jesus when they're around you. They ought to say, enough, okay, Jesus, he's like everything to you. They ought to know that. And if they don't know that, you need to learn to share that part of who you are. It's about sharing that part of you. I know people, and this is always sad to me, I know people who became a Christian later in life, maybe into their 30s or 40s. And when you look at their previous life, it was bad. I mean, it was a train wreck. It was all the worst things you can imagine a life being. Sleeping around, doing drugs, alcohol, lying, stealing, cheating, you name it, they did it. And they would come to this point of grace and faith in Christ, and their lives are radically altered. And now it's maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, and to know these people, you go, oh, they're wonderful, they're awesome. You would never imagine they had that in their past. And you know what? In one way, that is a wonderful testimony. It is about the transforming grace of Christ active in their lives. But here's what's sad. Nobody knows that was in their life. And people ought to know, because that's sharing what God has done in you and through you. It's not that you celebrate, look at the horror of a life that I lived. You celebrate that God has taken you from that horror and brought you into a life filled with hope. But if people don't know where you were, how can they celebrate what God has done? See, sharing is this. You are sharing what God has done in your life, through your life. When you invite people, they just experience it. When you share it, they hear the nitty-gritty details. You need to be willing to share it. Yes, you're embarrassed by it. I understand that. But don't be embarrassed for where you were. Celebrate the grace that God has made active in your life that has changed you. That is what sharing is all about. So make it about inviting. Make it about sharing. The next thing, if you want to have an incredible Christmas, make it about giving. Make it about giving. Whether it's a gift, whether it's giving of your time, it may be giving of your resources to provide an amazing meal. It may be giving of your hospitality to open up your home to other people. But give in amazing ways. Christmas is the season, if nothing else, it's the season of giving. We know in John 3:16, it tells us, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. We ought to give. In the Christmas story, we see this in the story of the wise men, the magi, the wise men from the east. And if you remember the story, they saw this star and they began to follow it. They were astrologers, and they looked at the stars and they understood things, and they said, hey, there's a new king that's been born, the king of the Jews. So they followed the star and they went to the capital of the nation of Israel. They went to Jerusalem. They figured if a king's born, he's going to be born in the capital. And they showed up and he wasn't there. But they were told by Herod and the scribes and the people who read the law, the Pharisees, and they said he would be born in Bethlehem. So they went to Bethlehem, which isn't that far away. They went to Bethlehem, and they found Jesus. They found Joseph, found Mary. And this is what happened. Going in to the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They offered gifts. They gave gifts. We need to make Christmas about giving. When we make Christmas about giving, it's not the value of the gift, although we ought to give that which is valuable to us. It's not about how much money you spend. It's not about getting into debt. It's not about the number of gifts you give. It's about saying, I want to give because I want to reflect the heart of my Heavenly Father. When you give, in other words, you give because of what God has done. You give because of what God has done. The wise men came and they gave because of what God had done. A new king was born. Here's the amazing thing. When the wise men gave, when the Magi gave, they expected nothing in return. You understand that? They didn't come to... Sometimes you came to Jesus when he was doing his earthly ministry as a grown adult. People came to Jesus for all kinds of reasons. To get a blessing, to get a miracle, to hear truth spoken. This is an infant. They expected nothing. They didn't expect a blessing. They didn't expect a miracle. They didn't expect recognition. They simply said, we want to honor. We want to celebrate. We want to give what God has done. And God has done something amazing. And because of that, we remember these men some 2,000 years later. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can give during the Christmas season. One great way to give is here at Hickory Ridge through our Christmas offering. Every year we take a special Christmas offering, and we take everything that comes in and we give it to certain areas that we just have been prayed about and thought about. So this is what we want the offering to go to this year. Now, at Hickory Ridge, one of the things as I've prayed and been here now for almost 6 years, and the leadership team has talked about it, we want as a church to be known for what we're for, not what we're against. There's a lot of churches that may be known for what they're against. We want to be known for what we're for. So if you hang out here long enough, and I'm going to talk about this more in 2019, but you're going to hear that there's 4 things that we want to be known that we're for. And the first is this, that we're for families. We're for families. For families finding hope and being strengthened, for marriages that succeed, for children that are loved, for brothers and sisters that learn to grow in relationship with one another, for, as we just did a whole series on building a dream house, that we know how to honor those who came before us and leave a legacy for those who come after us. We want to be known that we're for families. We also want to be for faith, where people find faith in Christ, where people come to saving faith in Jesus Christ, where their faith grows, where they're grounded in the Word of God, where they understand who God is, what He's about, and their life moves closer and closer towards Christ-likeness. We also want to be for friendships. For friendship. We want people that grow in relationship and community with one another, whether it's through connect groups, whether it's through just spending time serving on a different ministry team here at the church. But there's a lot of ways we want to see friendships grow and strengthen, that we celebrate the idea of community. There are so many people who are desperate for real, authentic relationship, real, authentic community. That's what we want to be known for. They're for families, they're for faith, they're for friendship. And the last one is this, that we're for freedom. The scriptures tell us it's for freedom that Christ set us free. We want to be known that we're for freedom, for helping people find freedom from addiction, freedom from drugs and alcohol, pornography, freedom from human trafficking, freedom from all kinds of things in life that hold people back. That's what we want to be known for, those 4 things. And so this year, the Christmas offering is all going to help people find freedom. To help people find freedom. That's what we want people to find, is freedom. And so 100% of what comes in this year for the Christmas offering is to help people find freedom. So we're going to take the Christmas offering when we receive that, and we're going to distribute it to 3 different organizations that are doing a fantastic job of doing this. Remember, you give because of what God has done. And so these are organizations that God has already done things through and will continue to do things through. So we're going to give first to the House of Grace, which is part of Global Servants. It's an international ministry. There's a girls' home in Thailand. There's another one in Ghana. They're hoping to open additional ones. But beyond that, they also have a school in Ghana in West Africa that services and educates young boys and girls, about 250 of them. So they are touching kids' lives all across the world. They're keeping girls from going into human trafficking, from the sex trade industry. They're helping them to walk in and find and live a life of freedom. And it's wonderful because we do want to be about family. So this is not just about freedom. It's also about these little boys and girls whose lives and destinies are changed. We're also going to give to Hoving Home, which helps women find freedom from addiction, drugs, alcohol, prostitution, you name it. And this is a national ministry. They have homes across the U.S., East Coast, West Coast. They're hoping to start additional homes, but they are a place where women can go. And for 18 months, they hear nothing but Jesus. Over and over and over. And they have, I think it's somewhere around an 83% success rate to help these women not only find freedom, but to live in freedom moving forward. It's an amazing organization. And so we have an international organization we're going to partner with. We have a national organization. And then we have a local one, Square One of Delaware. Square One. Square One is really devoted towards helping men. They have 3 homes right now, 3 houses that can accommodate about 27 men. They're hoping to open a 4th here pretty soon. But what Square One does is it takes men who have begun to overcome addiction in their life and says, great, you have that. Now how do you begin to put your life back together starting at Square One? So it provides a safe, sober living place where they go and they know they're going to be able to be resourced to begin to put their life back together and walk in the freedom that they found. So I am so excited about partnering with these organizations over the next number of weeks. You'll hear a little bit more about each of these individual ones and what they're doing. But I would encourage you, begin to pray. What would we want to give? What would I want to give to the Christmas offering that's going to help people find freedom? Maybe you've never given before. This is a great way to give for the first time. So I'm just going to take a step of faith. I'm going to give towards this because I want to see people find freedom. Maybe you give regularly. Maybe you give a regular percentage of your income, and that's wonderful. And you want to even take it a step farther and become a sacrificial giver. That's a great way to do that. It's a great time to do that. That's what we're going to do. My wife, Jamie, and I, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take and give, we give over 10% of our income each month back to the church, back to God. So for the Christmas offering, we're going to give our normal December tithe. But then over and above that, we're going to give an additional month's worth, 10% towards the Christmas offering. That's what we're going to do. You don't have to do that. You may want to do more. That's fine. But pray about it. We want to make this Christmas about helping people find freedom. When you make Christmas about giving, it's about saying, what is God done? And how do we get on board for what He's going to continue to do? So make Christmas about inviting, make Christmas about sharing, make Christmas about giving. And the last thing, and the most important, is this. Make Christmas about Jesus. Make Christmas about Jesus. It is so easy to forget that. We can get caught up in so many things that we forget that Christmas, above everything else, is about Jesus. This is not, please hear me, this is not about putting Christ back in Christmas. This is about making sure that Christ is the central reality of why you celebrate Christmas. So, in the Gospel of Luke, after Jesus is born, after the shepherds come and they leave, and now Jesus is a little bit older, there's a moment where Mary and Joseph bring Jesus to the temple to have him dedicated. And they run into a man named Simeon. And he'd been waiting for the promised Messiah. And he sees him and it's awesome. And then after Simeon meets Mary and Joseph and the boy Jesus, there's this other woman that is introduced into the Christmas story that we sometimes forget. Her name is Anna. The Bible tells us she was a prophetess. She had been waiting for the promised Messiah for a long time. So this is what it says about her in Luke. It says she had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage. And then she was a widow until she was 84. So after 7 years, her husband died, and she'd been a widow ever since, probably somewhere close to 60 years. She never left the temple, but worshiped night and day, fasting and praying. Coming up to them, so here's Simeon, Mary, Joseph, and the boy Jesus, and they're all there, and she comes up to them. At that very moment, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. We can think Christmas is about me. Anna could have said, this is my story. She didn't make it about her. She didn't make it about what she didn't have. She didn't make it about her loss. She didn't make it about what was missing from her life. She didn't make it about what she wished she had had. She had been a widow for decades. She had been by herself. But she put all that aside and said, Christmas isn't about what I don't have. It's about the message of hope in Christ. Christmas isn't about what I wish I had. Christmas is about Jesus. Christmas isn't about if I only had my family around me. Christmas is about Jesus. When you make Christmas about Jesus, it changes the whole dynamic of your Christmas. Why? Because Jesus is the fulfillment of what God has done. Jesus is the fulfillment of what God has done. And Anna understood that. She said, I may not have everything. I may wish I had other stuff, but Jesus is the promised coming Messiah that I have waited for, and that is what Christmas is all about. So you can have a Christmas and have everything. You can have your family around. You can have gifts under the tree. You can have more food than you know how to eat and more cookies and dessert than you know what to do with. You can have all the traditions. You can have everything you ever wanted and look back on this Christmas and find it wanting and say, it just wasn't what I hoped it would be. I think most of us, if we've lived long enough and had enough Christmases under our belt, probably have more Christmases that feel like that. We had everything that we ever wanted. And it was okay. Maybe next year we'll capture the magic. Maybe next year it'll be better. But here's the thing. You can have nothing. But if you make it about Jesus, you will have an unforgettable Christmas. You can have nothing. Anna, what did she have? Nothing. A widow woman would have nothing in that day and age. She stood at the temple day after day, fasting and praying, waiting for decades. She had nothing, and yet she had a Christmas that was unforgettable. And the same thing can happen for you if you make Christmas about these four things. Make it about inviting. Make it about sharing. Make it about giving. And make it about Jesus. If you do that, I promise you, this Christmas will be unlike any other. Now, there's a simple little way you can do this. I wanted to make this so practical for you. So here's what we've done as a church. We've made up these invite cards, and they're going to be available on your way out. I encourage you to grab one. Invite somebody. Now, I know inviting somebody to church is nerve-wracking, but again, it's about inviting, sharing, giving in Jesus. So we're going to start with the giving. See, inside this invite card is a $5 off. It's basically a $5 gift card to Amity Coffee. No strings attached. They don't have to buy a certain amount. They don't have to ever step foot in this church. But we hope they do. But here's what you do. You just say, hey, it's Christmas. And I wanted to give you a little gift. I don't know if you know, but there's this really great coffee shop right in Greenwood called Amity. And it's in the shop called Wilderlove. But I just want to give you a gift. It's a $5 gift card. You can go use it anytime and get a great cup of coffee. I just want to say Merry Christmas. Oh, and by the way, I'd love for you to join me on the 23rd for our candlelight service, or really any time during the month of December. And it's got the information there for them. They bring this into Wilderlove, and they tear off the top part. Amity keeps the top. They keep the bottom. They put that on their refrigerator. And now what have you done? You've invited them. You've given to them. They come in and they begin to hear and receive, and you're sharing with them the message of Christ because you want to make this Christmas all about Jesus. Now, because each of these cards represents $5, I don't want you to take 50 of them. But if you need 50, I'll give them to you. You just have to promise to give them all out. What we don't want is for you to take a stack of them and there they sit on your kitchen counter. There they sit in your car. There they sit and then get tossed into the recycle bin on the 26th. So take one, take two, give them out. Come back next week. Take one, take two, give them out. Give them out until we don't have any more. That's wonderful. But take one, invite somebody. Invite, share, give. Jesus. Make Christmas about that, and you'll have an unforgettable Christmas. Would you stand with me this morning?